For those who may be watching on Facebook or YouTube, you might have noticed that we're not doing the readings that you're probably used to unless you're a parish of St. Anne. Why is that? Well, this weekend we celebrate a very special day in our church's calendar for us here at St. Anne because, well, Monday is her Memorial Day, along with, of course, Joachim. So it's really the memorial of St. Joachim and Anne. But since we're focused on St. Anne, we can also then move that feast to this weekend, raising it to a solemnity. So it's not just like hey, remember good old Aunt Anne. It's like, yeah, St. Anne, she rocks. She's for us. So we moved the 26th to today. So if you are from a St. Anne in your parish, if you're watching, congratulations and have a great time. Now, a lot of people are going to ask, and so who is St. Anne anyway? I don't recall about hearing her in the Bible. Anybody? Anybody? If you say yes, we got a problem, because she's nowhere in the Bible. That is true. She's not mentioned in the Bible at all. So how do we know about her? St. Anne was the grandmother of Jesus Christ. She was born from the house of David in the line which was prophesied to bring the Christ to the people. In Hebrew, her name was likely Hannah, because the Greek word that we see in the New Testament would have been, if it was there, would have been Anne in Greek. It's a derivative of Hannah. Again, that makes her the mother of Mary, the woman who gave birth to Jesus by virgin birth. So that's something about her. But again, where do we get all this, right? Well, the details about St. Anne are found in the Gospel of James. Do you have a Bible that has the Gospel of James in it? Because if you do, let's talk again, okay? Yeah, there is no Gospel of James that is part of the Bible. In fact, it's called the Proto-Evangelium of James. In antiquity, it was a book that was claiming to be from the Apostle James. It might have been. And it surfaced to describe the life of St. Anne and Mary. To be clear, this so-called Gospel of James is part of what's called the Apocrypha, or writings that were competing to be included in the Bible but were rejected for various good reasons. We won't get into all the details. But anyhow, so it's from the Apocryphal Gospel of James. That's probably the best way to speak about it. There's other ones, like the Apocryphal Gospel of Thomas or Philip. So we learn from this book something about Anne and her husband Joachim. See, they were struggling as they were growing older. They had no children. And in fact, St. Joachim was mocked. And so he went off all by himself, and so did Anne, because they were upset that they could not conceive. And an angel appeared to each one of them separately, telling them to return home, and they would conceive. So that's what happened. So Anne was so overjoyed that she promised that she would dedicate her child, and who would that be? We now know, right? Mary. Dedicate her child to a life of service for God. She gave birth by natural means to her child, who was born also of original sin. Common images of St. Anne show her reading the scriptures to her new daughter, Mary. You might see this if you look at our statue over here of St. Anne that was refinished for our new construction. You'll see a book there. It's not meant to, there's nothing in the text of the Proto-Evangelium of James that says that she was actually reading to her, but it's actually more a theological motif that Anne taught Mary, which would be a no-brainer, right? Of course she would. When Mary then was 3 years old, Anne, however, then brought Mary, as the story goes, to the temple to give her to the service of God in the temple. That means she wasn't going home after this. So Mary in this story goes and stays in the temple. And the text describes that it was only before Mary became mature in her body that she was then given to marriage. Joseph was chosen, according to this tradition, by process of drawing lots. He was considered older, and he was wondering, like, why me? This might seem a little strange, a young maiden and me, an older man. Now, when we say older, we're not talking about 80, okay? Maybe like 30, possibly. So, do you feel older now? Middle age was a little bit younger than today. But legend then tells us that Anne never saw Mary after that. There's no evidence of that. If you go to Jerusalem, you will find a church there that dates back, well, it's a 12th century Crusader church, but its location dates back to the year 450, where pilgrims would go because they believed that was the house of Joachim and Anne. And if by chance you're going on the pilgrimage with moi in October, we're going to that church. If you can sing, great, because it's got the best acoustics. If you can't sing, please don't. It's kind of one of those things, like if you're really good, it magnifies that. And if you're really bad, just put on your noise-canceling headphones while somebody else is doing it. So the veneration of St. Anne then began in the church, Latin church, the Western church, in the 12th century, while in the Eastern church became more common in the 6th century. But again, it goes back even to the 5th century, as we hear. Curiously enough, the Protestant reformer Martin Luther had a devotion to Saint Anne. When we chose, I don't have it with me, but the statue on the outside of our building is a very unusual statue of Saint Anne. It has the basic same motif as far as a book, having a little Mary there, and having Anne. Keep in mind, Mary was given early on into the temple according to the Proto-Evangelium of James. So, something I ran across and somebody donated, I don't remember who it was an image that was created by some guy named Leonardo da Vinci, not DiCaprio. And it's a picture of the Madonna with Anne, St. Anne, Jesus, and John the Baptist. And if you didn't notice it, you passed by it as you walked through the church. So I put it on the easel there. It's just a drawing. They would consider that a cartoon at that time. Not a cartoon, we look like cartoons, but it's actually just a drawing, not a painting. And if you want to take a look at that on your way out, that is not an original of a Leonardo da Vinci, but it is a print of our Blessed Mother with St. Anne, Jesus, and St. John the Baptist. St. Anne then is the patron of Brittany, the province of Quebec, minors, mothers, women in labor, and grandparents. Happy St. Anne feast day. Together, I believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible. I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father. Through him all things